gentlemen, our final senior speaker, David Sabo.
This past summer, I had the opportunity to travel to El Salvador on a McCallie service trip with Mr. Honeycutt and Mr. Chapin, which is something I would highly recommend to all of y'all. And I was also lucky enough to have a lot of my close friends join me on this trip. As soon as we arrived at the airport in San Salvador, I knew this trip was going to be different. We stayed in a quiet hostel in a busy little surf town of El Tuco. There were people there from all over the world to surf. It was very different from any other trip I'd been on, in that the visitors there felt more like a community rather than a group of individual tourists. Our days followed pretty much the same pattern. We would wake up early and go to the local surf shop owned by a man named Wyo, whose impact on the town could be seen in the way that everyone he saw smiled at him and wanted to talk to him. And then on a more personal level, with the way he waded in the water with all of us and celebrated with us as we got up on the board for the first time, which made all of us feel like the professionals who were there to actually surf. And then afterwards, we would go back to the hostel and enjoy pancakes for breakfast, and then we would have hours to explore the tight city streets, the busy restaurants, and decide if we wanted pupusas or a mega burrito for lunch. And afterwards, we would walk over to Remar, which was the local orphanage and rehabilitation center, owned by a woman named Maria, who had been a resident there before. She told us about her past history of drug abuse and how much it meant for her to now be running the place that saved her life. All of the kids there looked at her like a mother, always reaching for her hand, asking her for advice, and leaving her with a smile on their face. Going to Remar was my favorite part of each day, and I knew this from the first moment I walked in, when one of the little ones grabbed my hand and asked if I wanted to draw on the sidewalk with her. After the first 5 days of following this pattern, I felt like I could spend my entire summer there. Everything just felt right, and I was the happiest I'd been in a while. That next day, we broke our pattern and took a long road trip and a long hike up the Santa Ana volcano. We were led by an amazing man named Ben Hameen, whose laugh could only be rivaled by that of Mr. Givens. He was an amazing tour guide, answering all of our questions, making sure we all knew what was going on, and making plenty of jokes for all of us to laugh at, including himself. It was a very long hike, and despite the heat and a little bit of stomach sickness, the views were breathtaking at the top. And when we made it to the top, I could see on for miles and miles. I felt like I was at the top of the world, and nothing could bring me down. Until the next day, May 30th, 2023. Everything was going great. We were following the normal pattern of the day. We surfed in the morning, and we were just getting back from Remar and about to head out for dinner, when Mr. Honeycutt told me to check my phone and that my parents wanted to talk to me. My heart dropped because I knew something was wrong, and my mind immediately went to Big Papa. My grandfather, who had battled pneumonia for the past couple months, cancer for the past 2 years, and diabetes for most of his life. I knew he was sick, but I didn't know how bad it was. I called my mom, and I knew my suspicions were right. And my dad answered the phone with a scratchy, "Hey, how are you doing, bud? We have something to tell you." I anxiously waited for what I feared. He continued and said that he was on the phone with his sister, my aunt, who was sitting right next to Papa in the hospital. And then my dad told me that if there was anything I wanted to tell Papa, I should do it now. Those words broke me, but I tried to pull it together as I told him how well I was learning how to surf, how amazing and beautiful the beach was. And when I realized I couldn't hold together for much longer, I told him how much I loved him and what he meant to me. He couldn't respond to anything I said, but my dad assured me that he heard every word, and to this day I pray that that is true. My parents tried to console me over the phone, but there was only so much they could do being thousands of miles away. So they told me everything would be okay, and I'd be with them soon. So we hung up, and I went back to my room, where Gabe helped me, as I cried every tear from my body. I had so many questions. Why him? Why now? Why hadn't I called him more often? Why couldn't I be with him then? I had no answers to these questions, and I still don't. But after I was done crying, I made a decision that despite my situation, I wasn't going to waste the rest of my time here. I was going to live how Papa would want me to live. So the next morning, I woke up with a smile on my face and I was ready to enjoy every moment, especially Remar, because it was our last day there, and it was my day to speak to the group. When we were there, I just thought about the love that Papa showed me and how I could share it with everyone around me. I sweated through countless games of soccer, practiced my Spanish with the older kids while they practiced their English with me. And at the end of the day, everyone sat down as I prepared to speak my message that I had written in light of the news about Papa. I told them all to live in the present and to enjoy what was in front of them. There are some things that we can't change no matter how hard we try. As much as I was talking to the kids, I was more so talking to myself. Papa passed away on June 2nd, 2023, while I was driving back home to Charlotte. A week later, all the family was brought together to celebrate the amazing man that he was. And while we were all together, I realized that even though Papa was gone, the best parts of him were still with us. His booming voice was heard every time the Pittsburgh Steelers scored, and my dad and I sang Steeler Boy, a song that he created. His kindness has continued on through his wife, and her kind heart and gentle smile. And his greatest quality, his love for his family, can be seen in the countless 5.5-hour car rides my family has made to see me here over the past 3 years. A person is only really gone if you forget them. So my challenge to y'all today is twofold. In this life, death, loss, and goodbyes are inevitable and numerous. So when someone leaves your life, don't let their absence rule, but rather keep them alive in the ways that they touch and impact you. And in turn, I want y'all to live a life that deeply impacts those around you, so that when you eventually leave, graduate, and pass on, the best parts of you can live on with the ones who love you. I pray that I and the rest of the seniors this year have had a real impact on some of y'all, because I personally can say that over the past 3 years, many of y'all have had impacts on me, and after graduating and saying all my goodbyes, many of y'all will continue to live on in me. I love you, Papa. I love you all, and go Big Blue.